I'd like to call this meeting to order. This is the Homer Glen Village Board meeting, Tuesday, June 11th. If we'd all stand, we'll have Trustee Kate Janis lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Costa?
Present.
Trustee DeVivo? Present. Trustee Kajanis?
Present.
Trustee Sabo?
Present.
Trustee Suisse?
Present.
Trustee Yukich?
Present.
Mayor Daley?
Present. I've been watching the telecast of the village board meetings on Channel 6. I think everybody needs to talk more into their mics. Sometimes it's a little difficult to hear. So if you can keep that in mind when you're speaking to the public, that'd be great. Okay, are there any amendments to the agenda? All right. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of April 10th, 2013?
So moved.
First by that was Trustee Costa.
Second.
Second by Trustee DeVivo. Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. Motion carries. Okay, under recognition. I've created a new recognition program in Homer Glen calling the Making the Difference Award. I will present this award from time to time to individuals who have exemplified the outstanding spirit of volunteering in Homer Glen. Tonight, I'd like to recognize the achievements of a longtime public servant and resident of the Homer Glen community, Mr. Andrew Bud Fazio. As many of you know, Bud has dedicated countless hours to the Village of Homer Glen as a member of the Plan Commission. In this capacity, he has assisted in guiding the direction the village has taken regarding land use. Being a Plan Commissioner means having a say in our community's direction. I think the members of the Plan Commission do a tremendous job working to improve the quality of life for our residents while shaping the future of the Homer Glen community. For Bud's endeavors on the Plan Commission and for all his volunteer commitments over the years, I'd like to present him with the village's first ever Making the Difference Award. Let me read the award. Hopefully I don't break it on you, Bud. Yeah, I'm going to have a little background to this. I can't see it. Making the Difference, awarded to Andrew Bud Fazio for your dedicated years of outstanding service and commitment. Thank you for everything you have done. You have truly made a difference. Village of Homer Glen Plan Commissioner, 2009 through 2013. Why don't you come on up, Bud, and we'll give you this award. Bud, how about you go up to the mic and tell a couple words about your whole life here in Homer Glen, and being the supervisor, Plan Commissioner, whatever. Just for the public.
Speak a little bit. I was just talking to Jim just a few seconds ago and told him how pleased I was to see what's happening with the Myers project. I could tell you stories about that project, make your hair stand up. But to see it coming true and see it coming to the village, it's going to be a big asset. I'm sure there's people that don't like it. There's always somebody that doesn't like something, but it's going to be good for the village. I don't know what to really say. I've been involved in politics in this community for 46 years or more. I've enjoyed it. It's been a privilege to serve the people of Homer, and I'm just glad to see the direction that it's going right now. Now, I'm not going to get up and take any more time, so thanks a lot.
Thank you again, Bud, for everything you've done for this community. Okay, the next portion of this meeting then would be reports and communications from the mayor and other officers. Can you hear me pretty good over there? Okay. I'll start it out. Some of this stuff out of the way. Under Homer Community Festival, June 20th through 23rd. On Thursday, June 20th, at approximately 9:30 p.m., the Magic Skies fireworks will go off at the Homer Community Festival, located at the northeast corner of 151st and Cream Road. This is a free event that I'm proud to help sponsor. I encourage everyone that attends to maximize their experience of the fireworks by turning into 101.3 FM to hear the music that accompanies the displays of lights. You will not want to miss this exciting community event. It was really something last year, although it wasn't put to music last year. Update on yesterday's Northern Will County Water Agency Board meeting. The Northern Will County Water Agency Board had a meeting yesterday in Romeoville. As the public knows, our Water Agency Board meetings move from town to town in alphabetical order: Bolingbrook, Homer Glen, Lamont, Romeoville, and Woodridge. Our next meeting will be in September and will be held in Woodridge. Yesterday's meeting lasted only 8 minutes and was basically held to pay agency bills and to get a brief update from the agency's legal counsel, Tressler LLP, on the status of the lawsuit to acquire the Bedford Park water transmission line. The board approved the payment of $62,038.44 in a mixture of engineering, consulting, and legal firm billings. It's important to remember that the Village of Homer Glen is only responsible for approximately 20% of the overall billings for the agency, or in this case, $12,407. The agency's legal counsel reported that the lawsuit with Illinois Lake Water, Illinois American Water, is still in the discovery phase. A hearing before the judge is scheduled for July. Under Illinois Department of Transportation, 159th Street stakeholders session and IDOT's final median decision. Tomorrow, Wednesday, June 12th, from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m., IDOT officials will be utilizing the village's boardroom to host their own meeting with a list of 159th Street stakeholders as defined by IDOT. The village is not hosting this meeting, IDOT is, and we've agreed to let them utilize our space. IDOT officials have told me that they intend to use the meeting to sit down with individual 159th Street property owners to discuss access to the parcels that they own. I encouraged IDOT to bring plenty of staff, including their land acquisition team. The village is happy to provide the space for this important event. The village was notified by IDOT at the end of last week that they have made a decision to stick to their long-standing, previously announced decision to install medians on the full length of their 159th Street improvement project from the tollway east to Orland Park. A number of us in Homer Glen, over a period of many years, have tried to convince IDOT officials not to install medians on 159th Street. IDOT has once again stated that they are not changing their long-standing decision that medians will be installed. However, IDOT has indicated an additional desire, as the project's design phase wraps up, to work with various Homer Glen property owners to try to come up with additional access to parcels where possible. I want to thank everybody, including Senator Redonio, Representative Durkin, who have tried to get IDOT to remove the planned medians on 159th Street. Unfortunately, everyone's efforts could not convince IDOT to change their position on this matter. So again, IDOT's 159th Street meeting is tomorrow in this room from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. Even if IDOT did not invite you to this meeting, if you have an interest in the topic, I encourage you to attend. Under Mad Walk, this past weekend, my wife Denise and I attended the Walk Like Mad 5K walk, which was held at Homer Township Healing Garden. The walk commemorated all those who have lost their lives as victims of drunken driving. I'd like to thank all the volunteers and participants of this important event. Under congratulations, I'd like to congratulate village staff member Heather Kokodinsky for becoming certified as a professional in human resources through the Society for Human Resources Management. Heather recently passed the PHR exam, which focuses on the technical and operational aspects of human resource practices, U.S. law, and regulations. The PHR exam has a 52% pass rate for certification. I'm proud that Heather successfully passed the exam on her first attempt and that the village organization supported her efforts. Okay, under a new initiative here, a creek cleanup program. I'm very excited to announce the development of a new program for the village of Homer Glen. I have directed staff to begin the planning process for a new Homer Glen cleanup program to be held this coming fall that will assist property owners who live along Long Run Creek in disposing of items that they are able to assist us with removing from the creek. Mike DeVivo, our highway commissioner, has agreed to partner with the village of Homer Glen for this important effort. Our goal will be to establish a weekend where residents who live along the creek can assist in cleaning up the creek by removing unwanted debris and placing that material on their curb. Then on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday following the cleanup weekend, crews from the highway department will remove the debris from the parkway and dispose of that material. This will be a partnership between our important Long Run Creek property owners, the village of Homer Glen, and our dedicated highway department. Manager Davis has told me that our new administrative intern, Alex Urick, and our development service director, Michael Salamovich, will be the village's chief coordinators of this program. Specific details still need to be worked out with the commissioner, Mike DeVivo, but I'm very excited about the program, and I want to let you know more details will be forthcoming. As everybody knows, village trustee Marcia DeVivo has long been a champion of achieving the type of program I've announced tonight. So I'll ask Marcia to be the village's board contact as this new program moves forward. And that concludes the mayor's report. Under trustees' reports, how about we start down with trustee DeVivo?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for initiating this creek cleanup with the help of the Highway Department in the village. I'm sure that this will be a successful cleanup. There's a lot of flooding that is due to the debris. We've had some opportunity to take some of these things, these trees and so forth, and shrubs that have floated down the creek. We've had some opportunities to pull them out, but nothing that would really take care of some of the larger things that are in the creek. So this is a great start, and I really thank the village for moving forward with this. And I do see some residents here that live on Long Run Creek, and they may want to say something also later on. So thank you.
Thank you, trustee DeVivo. Trustee Suisse?
Thank you, Mayor. The Homer Harvest Days Committee met last week and discussions centered on the advertising budget, vendors, entertainment, sponsorship, and venue setup. Sponsorship letters have been sent to local businesses, and committee members will commence following up in the next few weeks. Plans are going well. The next meeting is set for July 2 with more details to follow. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, trustee Suisse. Trustee K. Janis?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to report that the Joint Task Force, or the Joint Committee, Subcommittee of Economic Development and Environmental Committee met this past week. We finished up our work. We came to a couple thoughts and recommendations for changes to our current lighting ordinance. At this point in time, both committees are planning on presenting recommendations from the Joint Committee to our current committees of the Environmental, of Trustee Sables, and also my committee of the Economic Development. As we continue working on this process, I'd like to just say that it was long, sometimes frustrating, but very rewarding in the long run. I believe this is the first time two committees in our village, separate committees in our village, formed together to work on a common objective for the village. And for that, I'd like to say thank you to Trustee Sable. As we go forward, I look and present this to the full board. I'm looking for further input from the board on trying to put this whole lighting ordinance in practical purposes, not only for our business community, but for our residents, for our economic viability in our community as we go forward, but also for public safety. On the next subject, I've received several phone calls over the last several weeks, Mr. Mayor, from residents regarding Yangas Park. I'd like to report this since I've received these phone calls. I have talked to Village Manager Cameron Davis on this subject as well. It seems as though that some of our residents along Yangas Park are having quite a difficulty having discussions with the township who owns the property of Yangas Park regarding the construction of tennis courts and the basketball courts. They are very concerned regarding the construction as well as the entrance coming into the tennis courts and basketball courts, since the entrance into those are actually butt up against private property and homes. The residents are very concerned about their public safety as well as the safety of those who are trying to enter through their property, since they do have pets and animals. They're unable to, at this time, seem to have a solid conversation, in their words, with the township, and the township seems to be telling the residents that it is the village responsibility. That's why they're calling me and asking what direction they go next, since they're kind of at a wall, I guess you could say. So I just want to put that out there in the public forum in conversation.
Okay.
And that's it.
Thank you, Trustee Kate Janis. I think it does need to be made clear that that property is not the village's property. Yangas Park is a park owned by the township, in which they own several properties within the community that we do not maintain. They maintain these properties. So with that being said, we'll move along. Trustee Sabo.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Reporting for the Environment Committee. And the Environment Committee has rescheduled the stargazing event for Friday, July 12th from 9 to 11 at the Trentina Farm. Public is invited to view the night sky through telescopes and ask questions of the amateur amateur astronomers. We appreciate the services of Homer Glen EMA, who will be present. Regarding the lighting ordinance, the last meeting of the Community and Economic Development and the Environment Committee about the lighting ordinance took place on May 30th. And the members have completed their review and recommended amendments. The Environment Committee has discussed the draft at last night's meeting of the Environment Committee. CED will do the same before it is presented to the board. Some purposes of the lighting ordinance are to have safe nighttime lighting while reducing glare for motorists and pedestrians, reducing electric costs with more efficient economical lighting, plan for consistent lighting throughout the village, and provide guidelines to have a level playing field for business owners. Many ideas that were incorporated into this draft were talked about and presented by Trustee Sabo at meetings last year, including removing the compliance date and other important wording that would make the ordinance more pleasing. And we have also added illustrations in 3 appendixes. Pictures worth 1,000 words. Regarding Earth Day Arbor Day, the Environment Committee has reviewed and evaluated Earth Day Arbor Day that was held on May 18th in order to plan for activities in 2014. We thank the Homer Horizon for their fine article and photographs published after the event. Regarding the emerald ash borer and the request for proposals, the request for proposals from the International Society of Arboriculture, ISA, certified arborists will be sent this week. The Environment Committee looks forward to assisting with the selection process. Among the grant obligations are the development of an emerald ash borer management plan, recommended plantings for diversity of trees, and stem-by-stem inventory. We know that the village residents are very concerned about emerald ash borer and have sought many times responses from the village. The village has received the grant in March, and the first report is due at the end of June. I would like to address something that the trustee Kajanis had mentioned about the township and the park. And I believe that anything in regard to the township business and the village should be checked out by the township if people are by the village if people are coming to the township and reporting on the township. After reading the manager's memo, I have called the township and discussed in detail the two issues that were mentioned. So before this goes in the wrong direction, I believe that the township should be able to respond before any announcements are made by the village. Because the residences that reported here are few, and the residents that like what the township is doing are many. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Sabo. Trustee Yukich?
Thank you, Mayor. Last Tuesday night, we had our meeting, last Wednesday night, we had our meeting with the Will County Police, and they had asked us to notify all the residents to please lock your windows, lock your doors when you're leaving the cars. Some have been vandalized. None of the cars, the windows were broken out, anything like that. They're going to the cars that are open. So they ask you to please close them up. This way nothing gets stolen from you. Same thing with the house. Also, it's a time of year where all the kids are out of school, so please watch your speed. They're playing in the streets, they're playing in the parks. They gotta get across the street from the parks, so we don't want anyone getting hurt. And last, I agree with Trustee Sabo. I think the township, we should be on board with the township on this. We need to work together, not bash each other, not go against them. I sat down with some of the trustees. They did go out and talk to the residents. They were all notified what they were doing before they did it. So rather than, he said, she said, I think the board should sit down and work together. That's what we're all here for, is to make everything better for everyone. We're all part of the township, even though we're Homer Glen. So I think we're making a mistake. I think we need to sit down with the township and get this smoothed out. That's my report.
Thank you, Trustee Yukich. And for the record, so that nobody thinks anybody's trying to bash anybody, this is just identifying who's in charge of the properties. I've seen correspondence even this past week from the supervisor that in dealing with the Girl Scouts issue with the festival, whether or not they could have a volunteer box there. She made it very clear in the letter that these are two separate governmental agencies. I'm not positive if you have that in your manager's memo, a copy of that letter, but she actually goes into the fact that these are two separate governmental entities that are in charge of many different things individually. And that's all we're trying to point out, is that if you do have something, comments on the tennis courts or Yangus Park, please talk with Supervisor Myers, and we'll assist you in getting through to her. And we have done combined projects with them. The walking path that went through Yangus Park is something that quite a few people like. So we do work very well with the township. With that being said, Trustee Costa, you have a report?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to report for the Fest Committee. As Mayor Daley reported earlier, our Fest is finally 1 week away. It's been a long 11 months and 3 weeks of planning, and it's gone very well. The Fest begins next Thursday, which is June 20th, and it runs to the 23rd, and it is on 151st and Cream Road, right there where it was the last 2 years. The bands, one more time this year. Thursday night, Pink Floyd is going to start off the Fest. Also, again, fireworks night is on Thursday. This year we're doing something a little different. I'd like to just talk about fireworks. We've actually choreographed the display to music, and as Mayor Daley mentioned, it's also going to be transmitted on FM band. So the best way to see the fireworks, especially with the choreography, is a lot of that comes from what's called ground display, and it's not just little 4 feet high, but it is, rather large. But the best way to see that would be to get over to the sports complex, pick out a spot. You will probably see the ground display the best from that location. And then, of course, the aerial display will still be coming from the south side of 151st, which will be, everybody can see that quite well. On to Friday night, 80's Enough will start off as the first band. After that, Infinity. Infinity's a wonderful band, usually pretty crowded. Again, if you're going to plan, you want to hear Infinity, I would come early. Saturday, Fortunate Sons, American English, which is a British band, mainly the Beatles music. And then also K.O. Bossy, the 3 bands for Saturday. On Sunday, the McKenna Heartland Band, and then Hillbilly Rock Stars. Pretty much goes without saying that's going to be more of a country western type afternoon. So what we try to do is get music that just about anybody or everybody can enjoy one of the nights or hopefully each night. Also remind everybody that the parade is Saturday. So we will again, as we've done in many, many years, there will be a few road closures for the safety of the people watching the parade and also the parade. 151st Street from Bell Road through Parker Road will be shut down approximately 9 to 9:30 for the parade lineup. And then right after that, we'll be closing down Parker Road from 151st to 143rd for the parade, which actually kicks off at 11 o'clock. Hopefully after the parade, everybody that's there goes right over to the fest, because the fest starts on Saturday right after the parade. Also, we're, again, still looking for volunteers, so any high school students that are looking for community service time for their graduation requirements, it's a great time to get your service time and have a lot of fun, too. We have a good complement of high school students that come out. More than likely, there will be kids that you know from school. Also adults, if you want to volunteer for the fest, we're always looking for adults to help also. There's also mega passes available. It's from now until next Wednesday. Actually, we've been selling them for a couple weeks now. You can buy a mega pass for $45. That pass is good for all 4 days, unlimited rides. After Wednesday, the mega pass costs $55. So you can save $10 if you buy it early. That's what I have for the parade and fest. Also, if the board remembers, I'd like to talk about 2 weeks ago, we actually passed, I guess, an ordinance that would share the cost of fest insurance based on the township's decision. The township, of course, and the village both planned this event together. The township's meeting was last night. Of course, our meeting was last week. So I went to that meeting. The township board did not approve the expenditure for the fest insurance for this year. What did come out of that meeting, though, is they asked if the committee can go back, get additional information about the insurances, possibly more quotes for next year. Also, just thinking about it now, if we can contact some more communities that get the insurance, see who they use, and see how it's worked for them in the past. And then for next year's fest, report back to the board, and then possibly consider this for, again, next year for the insurance. If anybody has any questions, ask. Otherwise, Mr. Mayor, that's my report.
Thank you, Mike. Okay, is there a treasurer's report?
No trouble.
How about, does the clerk have a report?
No report, Mr. Mayor.
Does the village attorney have a report?
No report this evening, Mr. Mayor.
How about any task force chairpersons? Okay. How about any public safety officials? Joe? Okay. How about the village manager?
No report tonight.
All right. Before we move to public comment, I just wanted to say something about an individual who just passed this week who was very instrumental in educating our youth in the sports programs, Mr. Dan Sexton. He will be sorely missed. He was a former coach of the Homer Stallions and also coach in HAC. He was a former president of the Homer Stallions for 4 years. I know he worked with the former supervisor out there, Bub Fazio. He passed this past week. He has two sons that I actually coached when I was in the program, Derek and Nick, and my hearts go out to you guys, and your dad was a great guy. With that being said, we'll move to public comment. Thanks, Joe. Let's see here. Dave Freedy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening.
Name and address for the record.
My name is Dave Freedy. I live at 12749 Oak Valley Trail, Homer Glen. I'm here tonight representing the Oak Valley Homeowners Association Board. I'm here to recommend and encourage an approval vote on items I-4 and I-5, which concern improvements to surface water problems in Oak Valley. This is an old subject. We've talked about it before. This just represents another step toward solving our surface water problems in our subdivision, and we appreciate your interest in helping us. I would also like to recognize the hard work by the village staff and some of us in Oak Valley in this next phase of solving this problem with an overall and permanent solution. Finally, I'd like to express my concerns on what's going to happen with the surface water that gets generated from the 159th Street improvements. I'll be here tomorrow to attend the meeting, but we do have concerns about where that water will be routed. I'm at the bottom of the hill, so I would get it if it's coming down. Thank you again for your help and assistance in this matter, and I-4 and I-5. Thanks.
Thank you, Dave. The next speaker would be Arlene C. Arlene, if you could, name and address for the record.
Arlene C., 14316 West Hickory Avenue, Homer Glen. Good evening. I know time is precious, but obviously I come from a generation in which casual professional attire was zero tolerance. So I do have to say, Mr. Mayor, you always look like a mayor.
Thank you.
I'm also waiting for GQ to discover Mid-America mayors, and I know you're going to be on the cover, and therefore we will bask in the glory in the humble village of Homer Glen. So
I appreciate it. I wrote that very well for you, right?
I was sitting in my rocking chair reading it. Okay. To the serious point, it's water also. Some of my neighbors are here with me this evening, and we are on Hickory Avenue, which is at Cedar to the no outlet, 10 houses. In the past couple of weeks, you have been very patient with me. I've been to the township, Pam Myers, Karen, the assessor, then led me to Marsha DeVito, who was kind enough even to come to my home and talk to me and some of our neighbors. Then Mr. Cameron Davis has given time. And just yesterday, with the luck of the Irish, fortunately, I was coming into the village and I ran into the mayor. Unfortunately, I ran into the mayor for him, and he gave me his time also. So much of what I'm going to say, you have already heard. Also, Mr. Mayor, you upstaged me by your comment about cleaning up the creek, which was one of my requests for this evening, and I thank you for that. I'd like to present for everyone to think about maybe two objectives. A long-range goal, which would be a study, hopefully, Marcia, we've talked about this, that with a grant and some money from other sources. But I also realized that that would take years, and we would cross towns, and we would cross counties. But I'd still like to see if some progress could be made. So instead of someone saying the water comes from Tampier, no, the water comes from someplace else. We would have an engineering picture of how that water really does flow. But that is just one thing. On the short-range goals, and that is what you addressed already this evening, it is really Long Run Creek that is constantly overflowing. With the April rains, we on Hickory could not even leave our area. It was that bad. And it gets worse all the time. So one of the things I'd like the board to think about is the first one that you've already said you're going to do, and I'm elated about that. that many people along the creek do not realize what they're doing when they throw grass clippings, old tires, and so forth. To have a day in the fall in which clean up, put it at the roadside, and with the help of the township, it can be picked up, that will be a wonderful start. I hope that letter, with the help of your intern, will go out, because I do want to believe that many people who live along the creek really don't understand what is happening. Also, if we could take it then, see how that goes. Maybe could we have a meeting in which if you have a list of these people, they could all be invited to come and explain how important to keep the creek unobstructed. That would be something for us to think about in the future. If then, and I know this is an iffy one, there are some people who live along the creek who cannot get out there and clean it. Maybe, like me, they're ancient teachers of ancient history and they need some help. If we could get some volunteers to do that with the permission of the property owners, I'm sure we have some young men in the community that would be willing to do that. Please think about that, perhaps for the future. Also, and this is rather punitive, and I think we might have to worry about it, sometimes you get my attention when you hit me in my pocketbook. If after many notices and offers of help and so forth, people do not keep their creek clean, maybe there should be a fine. I know that's dangerous territory to go to, and I'm just asking for that in the future. But to wait for a long-run analysis isn't going to help people along the creek, but to do these gradual kind of things, of which, again, you already did number one, which was my request, and that will help a great deal. In fact, one of my neighbors called me today to say there's a huge tree across the creek at 171 and 135th. Things like that block. Maybe we could take a look at that even before the fall. But how will that work when people get the letter? Will they be attended to it? Fine, I'm patient. We can see what happens. If that doesn't work, maybe then a meeting, maybe the offer of volunteer help to clean up the creek. And finally, and maybe we would not have to go there, there could be a fine if I do not keep my part of the creek clean. I do have some of my neighbors here with me today who support those things. Thank you very much for your time and for your attention. I have pictures, if you would like to see, Flood USA, Homer Creek.
Thank you very much. And I think one of the groups that could help us out with this, because they're always looking for things to do, is the Boy Scouts. So we'll contact them and a couple other volunteer organizations in town and see if we can't get them to enlist into this idea, and the manager can reach out to them. Right, Cam?
Right.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right. The next speaker would be John Coy.
Well, here's number 3 on the same subject.
John, name and address for the record.
John Coy, 12056 Venetian Way, Homer Glen. I've been out looking around with 143rd Street, and I even approached the supervisor, and they're going to run 2 6-foot double-wide culverts underneath the road down 143rd Street. Now they put in some temporary sewer system right now, and they're doing nothing but bringing this water to Long Run Creek, which is thusly flooding Yangus Park. That's where it starts. That's right where they're taking all this water from Bell Road, bringing it down to Will Cook Road, then coming down Will Cook Road and depositing it right at the south end of Yangus Park. All right, there's a problem. Here's another problem with this. 159th Street, we're going to have meetings tomorrow. You guys have had meetings, and I applaud you on some of the stuff you've done. But we have to start thinking. I went out looking to find out where they're going to have retention and detention areas. Nobody knows. Everybody I've talked to said they're just going to let the water run naturally to the south. Have you gone from Bell Road east to Will Cook and look south? It's all downhill. All our flooding is at the bottom. 159th Street better put in, and you guys better get on them, some retention, detention, or somewhere, or sewers to put this water where it's supposed to go. And I think we should get the lawyer involved, because
I think you ought
crazy.
to, I've seen the plans. They have detention and retention up and down the street. I think you need to come tomorrow and ask that question of the officials, and they'll give you a direct answer, and they'll show you the plans exactly where this detention is.
All right, the only one I heard about was in, where you were gonna buy that property over there, that Dunn Farm. Other than that, everybody I
there's
talked to
multiple
said it's just
locations.
gonna naturally run down the hill.
There's always been multiple locations on the plans ever since they've been put together for years, and Mike has those if you want to take a look at them.
All right, in other words, I can come in and take a look at them.
You can look at them tonight
Sure.
if you want to.
Sure. Okay, you got anything else, John?
Nope.
All right, thank you, John. That concludes public comment. The next items on the agenda are legislation and action items. What would this be? This would be I-1. Is there a motion to approve a 48-month FMV lease at $255 per month for a Savin MP 5002 digital imaging system? It is understood that the current Savin 9040 copier printer system lease expires June 2013. The new upgraded and enhanced Savin MP 5002 digital imaging system will replace the village's current leased equipment.
So moved.
First by trustee DeVivo, second by trustee Costa. Is there any discussion? Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Costa.
Aye.
Trustee DeVivo.
Aye.
Trustee Kajanis. Trustee Sabo.
Aye.
Trustee Suisse.
Aye.
Trustee Yukic.
Aye.
Okay. This would be I-2. Is there a motion to approve an extension agreement with New Way Homewood Disposal for refuse, recycling, and yard waste collection? It is understood that this agreement extends the terms and provisions of the village's current refuse contract with New Way from July 1st, 2013 through June 30th, 2014.
So moved.
First by trustee Yukic,
Second.
second by trustee Costa. Is there any discussion?
A little.
Go ahead.
One thing. Cameron, we are going to be working with them to see, we're either going to set up bids to change it, or we're going to sit down with New Way to have them extended for more than 1 year?
We are. We've committed, both sides have committed to sitting down in July and August, and in good faith, attempting to come up with a potential 2 more years of an extension. That will involve, obviously, feedback from the village board on what you would like to see changed in the contract, and obviously, they'll have some ideas on their side. So we committed in July and August to sit down in good faith over a course of a number of meetings and see what we can come up with. Then we'll come back and report to the village board in September. If we're able to come up with something that everybody agrees to and it's a good deal for the residents, then you can act on that. And if it isn't, and we're not able to come to an agreement, then we can prepare for a bid to go out for all the service providers in the area.
Thank you.
Thank you. In my discussions with Tom Agaman, who's sitting in the back here, and I actually was unaware of this, but all of the garbage trucks in Homer Glen are run by natural gas, which is a pretty impressive thing. We had quite a lengthy discussion about that and some of the great benefits that New Way does for us. I can't recall, in talking with the village manager, any real complaints about New Way, so I think it's a perfect thing to do to extend this, work on it, and see if we can't tweak it a little bit as we move into the future. So with that being said, is there any further discussion?
Just
Trustee
a comment.
DeVivo?
Just a comment, Mayor. I've only heard good things about New Way. No complaints from any of the neighbors, residents that I've talked to. They all are very, very happy with New Way, so
Great,
And I would like to comment too, the same here.
they're very nice people.
fantastic.
Mayor, one of the things I just might mention, this is the 7th waste hauler that I've had the opportunity to work with in my career. I've been here for almost 2 years now. Since I got here, we've gotten 3 complaints
Thank you.
in 2 years.
I had a question.
Sure. Go ahead, Margaret.
And my question for the manager is, when did you say that the bid would go out for all service providers?
What we're going to do is we're going to sit down with New Way in July and August and attempt to negotiate in good faith an additional 2-year extension, because your existing contract only allows for you to go up to 3 years. If the board doesn't think the results of those negotiations are fruitful enough, if you're not happy with the results of them,
Then we will prepare bid documents and go out to bid probably in early winter or late winter, so that that can all be wrapped up before the contract obviously expires next June.
Okay. Is there any further discussion? Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee DeVivo.
Aye.
Trustee K. Janice.
Aye.
Trustee Sabo.
Aye.
Trustee Suisse.
Aye.
Trustee Yukic.
Aye.
Trustee Costa.
Aye.
Motion carries. Congratulations, Tom. This would be I3. Is there a motion to approve ordinance 13-038, an ordinance authorizing the execution of an open space land acquisition and development grant program project agreement with the State of Illinois Department of Natural Resources for the development of parkland in Goodings Grove subdivision?
So moved.
First by Trustee DeVivo.
Second.
Second by Trustee K. Janice. Is there any discussion? Trustee Sabo?
I'm sorry, I think that Trustee Suisse had her,
No.
Go ahead.
okay. Yeah, on page 2, in the second paragraph, it says the village's portion of the funding will be covered by a $173,000 park donation from Gallagher and Henry, the developer of Goodings Grove subdivision. And I just wondered, on page 1, it says that the park site was donated. So are there two things here, or is this just one thing?
Village Manager?
Well, the park, you have the amount of money that it lists there is a park donation fee from Gallagher and Henry. It has been on your books for a number of years, and it can only be used to develop a park in the Goodings Grove site. The parcel that you have for the park development was the parcel that was donated as a part of the development agreement for the Goodings Grove subdivision. So they go hand in hand, and that's one of the reasons we were able to apply for the grant, is that we already had the matching money in the bank and it could only be used for that purpose. We were thrilled to get the grant. Actually, if truth be told, we were kind of planning a multi-year approach to applying for the grant because we weren't sure that we'd be so lucky in our very first year, but we were, and so we're excited to move forward with it.
Okay. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
I
Okay.
have a comment, Mr.
Trustee Suisse?
Has this area been checked for, we don't want a Yengus Park floodplain?
Right. It's not in the floodplain.
Okay,
We're
so
good that
that's,
way.
we're good that way.
We're good that way.
Okay.
I did have another question.
Go ahead, Trustee Sabo.
In that same paragraph on page 2, it says also the village will need to create a drive access and parking area, which was not part of the grant request.
Right.
So my two questions are, was it possible to include it, or was there a reason not to? And has there been some anticipation of what that would cost?
Right. We have done some estimates on what that would cost, and we think it'll be pretty minimal. It's an opportunity actually to potentially use some MFT funds to support park sites because it will be a portion of a future public road. This site right now is right at the end of what will be a future public road. The subdivision was platted, and there's a whole series of roads that will be built, and in the future, of course, there'll be a public road that goes immediately in front of the park. Right now, what we need to build just in the interim is a small four-spot park landing off of the existing road, and we think the cost of that is going to be pretty minimal. It'll be similar to what you see currently in place, actually, at the Erin Hills. Thank you, Marcia's reminding me, at the Erin Hills Park, where there's parking just in the parkway. That's what we'll be doing for this park. The public will also, in case there are larger groups, be able to utilize the streets that are adjacent to the park currently to park in the meantime.
Okay. Does that answer your question, Trustee Sabo?
Yes, it does.
Okay. Are there any further questions? Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee K. Janice.
Aye.
Trustee Sabo.
Aye.
Trustee Suisse.
Aye.
Trustee Yukic.
Aye.
Trustee Costa.
Aye.
Trustee DeVivo.
Aye.
Motion carries. I4, is there a motion to recommend approval of the proposal from H.R. Green for construction engineering services related to the completion of the Oak Valley Stormwater Improvement Project in the amount of $20,410? It is understood that H.R. Green proposal includes construction layout, which was originally part of the Copenhagen construction bid proposal. However, this item will be removed from the Copenhagen construction contract for a cost savings of $14,000.
So moved.
First by trustee Kay Janis.
I second.
Second by trustee Swees. Is there any discussion? Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Sabo?
Aye.
Trustee Suisse?
Aye.
Trustee Yukic?
Aye.
Trustee Costa?
Aye.
Trustee DeVivo?
Aye.
Trustee Kay Janis?
Aye.
Motion carries. This would be I-5. Is there a motion to accept the proposal and approve a contract with Copenhagen Construction for the Stormwater Improvement Program in the Oak Valley subdivision in the amount of $125,609? It is understood that this amount reflects a deduction of $14,000 for construction layout, which will be done as part of the H.R. Green Construction Engineering Services contract.
So moved.
First by trustee Kay Janis.
Second.
Second by trustee Yukic. Is there any discussion? Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Suisse?
Aye.
Trustee Yukic?
Aye.
Trustee Costa?
Aye.
Trustee DeVivo?
Aye.
Trustee Kay Janis?
Aye.
Trustee Sabo?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Mayor, I would just like to say on that item, I really want to thank Michael for all the work that he did on that RFP and also HR Green. The numbers came in very low. We were very excited about that because it might be that we're able to do pretty much the entire project just with the grant money that we received and not have to use any of the bond money in this particular subdivision, which of course will free up more money for us to do work in other subdivisions and in other projects. So I want to thank Michael and HR Green. They put together a great package, and I think it helped to result in a low bid, which is great.
Great, thank you. This would be I-6. Is there a motion to approve ordinance number 13-037, an ordinance establishing school facility impact fees within the village of Homer Glen, Will County, Illinois? It is understood that this ordinance will be reviewed by the village board in March 2014 for adjustment.
I so moved.
First by trustee Yukic, second by trustee Sabo. Is there any discussion?
Yes.
Trustee Sabo, go right ahead.
I wanted to refer to something that was said on page 2, second paragraph there. It says, all of the districts were concerned that its change be of a temporary nature, and I didn't know which way they were going on that.
Right. This is one of the reasons why the motion says that you'll review it in a year. The districts actually said that they wanted to see what the results of it were over the course of a 12-month period, all right? And so that's what we basically set this up to be, a 12-month pilot program. The board will review it in 12 months and decide if you want to go back to only making the developers pay a time of building permit, or if you want to continue this program. And I committed to the school districts, as the Administration and Finance Committee wanted me to do, that we would absolutely take their feedback into consideration when the board reviewed it in a year. And so I committed to the superintendents that I would be back in contact with them in 10 months to discuss it and to get their feedback.
Okay. My other question was, because it does say in here that it could be 24 months.
Right.
And I would like some clarification on that. But my question is, would students be attending and the fee wouldn't be paid?
Well, let me ask the first part of your question first. A developer could come in 11 months from now and take advantage of this program. And then they would have a full 12 months after that. So that's where the 2-year comes into place. It's 12 months from when you get your building permit, when you come in for your permit for your house. The school districts are completely aware of that. They understand that it's a 12-month pilot program, but the results of it could extend out to 24 months because of timing. And they completely get that, and they understand that, and they're okay with that. Now, say your second question for me.
My question,
I've
second
forgotten it as I
question
answered the first part.
Will a student be attending school and the fee is not paid?
Right. It's very rare for all the stars to align for a building permit to occur, and for everything to work beautifully where the student is in the house the family is in the completed new house in 12 months and they're in school. We did talk about that with the superintendents and they were completely okay with it. What they wanted to make sure is that the board was going to review it again in 12 months and they were going to take their opinions into consideration. The Administration and Finance Committee agreed with that, and so that's why it's kind of a limited 12-month pilot program.
I see, though, that District 33C would rather have the ordinance as it was in 2006 without the option. I do see that. My other concern is that...
That's not what they communicated to me. John, who we deal with at the district, is happy with the program. He's familiar with it. He knows that they have it in Lockport, and they're supportive of the program. They have been since we discussed it.
I am conveying what I read.
Oh,
I
okay.
don't know everything, so
Yeah.
I'm only conveying what I read. The other is it seems there's more work involved here and more tracking over a period of time. It was much neater, cleaner when they paid their permit fee at the time they wanted to get their building
Right.
done. So that's a concern of mine. And I don't see this as an advantage to the school at all. Not even for a period of time up until the spring of next year. And I want to ask, have the schools actually seen the full ordinance?
I don't know if they've seen the full ordinance. Yeah, they've seen the language, because the language, the main portion that's being changed was in letters that were communicated to them. The superintendents completely understand the program. You don't need to worry about that. They completely understand it. They understand the gist of it. There's no question there. I don't want you to raise any concerns about that, because there's no
Well, I am
question
concerned
about
for the schools. I think that they're hesitant too. I don't know why we need to have this change.
Okay.
I have a question, Mr.
Trustee
Mayor.
Suisse?
As I read this is the way it's written. These are two separate fees, an impact fee and a separate facility fees that is being combined together.
No, there's no combination occurring. It's just for one of the fees. It
And
just
which
covers
one-
one of the fees.
which
It's
one
the
is-
one that it mentions here in the backup.
Because it says the ordinance establishing school facilities impact
Right,
fees. So
right.
this is for just the facilities fee?
Let me look here. I always get the two. Yes, right. The impact fee.
Okay.
There's two fees. This only applies to one. Okay, in other words, this doesn't have anything to do with the donation of a property or anything like that. This is just the regular building permit fee that's paid at time of building permit for every new home.
Okay,
That's the
so-
only fee that it pertains to.
So it applies just to the impact fee?
Whatever the language is in the ordinance.
Okay,
I have to read it
just
very
not both?
Quickly. It does not apply to both.
Cam, if I have this correct, the purpose of this is to take take and loosen up the financial burden on the builder.
It's a cash flow issue for builders to try to encourage more residential development in the community. A lot of communities in the area have done it. Lockport has done it. And so as developers compare communities, Lockport, New Lenox, Mokina, and they look for, of course, we have a lot of available lots in this community, and they look at different communities and they say, well, this community is allowing us to pay this at the end when we actually
Defer
sell the
payment till the
home
end, yeah.
versus at the front when we don't have the money yet. It's an attempt for the village to be competitive in the residential housing market so that we can encourage more developers to look at vacant lots in the community, and it helps them with cash flow. I would agree with Trustee Sabo. It's not designed to be beneficial to the school district, but the school district is familiar with it, especially the high school district, because Lockport has been doing this for a long time. So we're in a competitive environment to build homes, and this is an attempt to try to be as competitive as possible and encourage residential development.
Yeah, in our discussions when we talked about it from the beginning was how is it advantageous to the school, a school's budget, that they're seeing money at a later date instead of up front. I get all that, but if the school in their budgeting process doesn't have a problem with it, and it's giving a incentive to builders to build in Homer Glen, I see it as being a good thing as long as it doesn't impact the school's budget. And we were assured that they're behind this. Otherwise, we wouldn't be bringing it forward. So I've
The
had,
the number one advantage to the schools, of course, is that if this actually results in more developers wanting to build homes in Homer Glen, that means there'll be more children and they'll be receiving more impact fees. So if this results even in one additional home being built or two additional homes being built, the school districts will make more money because those homes potentially would not have been built. So
Right.
that's the ultimate benefit.
Trustee Yukich?
Not to be the devil's advocate, but we're still getting over a 4-year recession right now, 5-year recession. If you're trying to take the burden off the developer now, not to pay the money until the back end, what happens if the back end never comes?
Well, I'm going to be an optimist on that one.
Well, the
I'm
only thing that I
hoping
don't want to
that that's
do
not true.
is,
We have seen a steady increase in building, I think everybody knows,
I
we've seen
agree.
a steady increase. The trouble is it's a competitive environment now. We're competing, I just spoke with I spent a half an hour on the phone yesterday with a family who lives in Lamont who are considering either moving to Homer Glen or moving to New Lenox. I'd never in the whole, over the course of my career have I spent, a half hour trying to convince someone to move to the community. This is the competitive environment we're in. And if they call New Lenox, my colleague there will do the same thing. We're trying to share with them all the good aspects. And if there's anything that we can do competitively to get developers to consider more lots in the community, like you did last week when you did last meeting when you approved the subdivision issue in Stonebridge. If there's anything that we can do, I think we should look at that, especially if there's no harm on the backside if the school districts are supporting it. Now, if over the course of this next year, we don't see any true benefit for this, I'd be the first one to say we should back away from it because it doesn't seem to have really resulted in a benefit. But I say if we can give it a shot, we should try to give it a shot because every single new home that gets built in the community is a positive for all of us. So-
And if the school system had an issue with it, we certainly wouldn't be trying to move this forward. It was brought to the school system, and the school system had absolutely no doubt that it would work, so therefore, we moved it forward, and that's where we're at tonight.
right, and Mayor, I do agree with what you're saying, but the side that I look is if God forbid it didn't get paid, does it fall on the person that just got done buying the house?
They
And
have
if it
to
doesn't fall on a
Right.
person that's buying the house, does it fall on the taxpayers? Because if you have more kids come to the school and no one paid the impact fees, before I built my house, I went to each school and paid the impact fees.
Right. The attorneys are if this gets approved, the attorneys are developing an agreement that has to be signed, and at the end of that, they get basically 1 year to pay the fee. This is a 1-year deal. And if they don't pay that fee, they have a penalty that is equal to the fee. So it's a pretty harsh penalty, and they don't get an occupancy permit. Remember, no one's getting an occupancy permit until this is paid. So that's the ultimate hammer.
So there's no
And they're gonna, if they don't pay it in 12 months, they're gonna have a pretty big fine to pay.
And I think one other thing that's a safeguard is when you go in for a mortgage, and you're talking with a bank and they're looking at all the fees associated with it, I'm sure they're gonna have, if they're gonna hold the mortgage, they're gonna definitely know how you're gonna meet your impact fee obligation 12 months from now. I mean, if I'm a banker, I'm certainly looking at that. Is there any other questions?
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Trustee
Thank you,
Higgins.
trustee Swees. Just looking over and listening to all the comments. On the communications from the schools back to the village, based on your drafts that you've sent to the school districts, both school districts on 33C and 205 have no issues with this draft. So I just want to put that out, have no issues in this draft as it's been described. And they do understand the deepening on this, depending on whether they take out permits could be longer than 12 months. They did specify that in their response back to the village. So they're well aware of the implications on their end. And also, we do understand that when we talk about children entering schools without these fees being paid, well, if there's no occupancy permit to that house, then there is no student in that house attending our schools. So I think we're kind of muddying the water on this topic to where, one, the school districts have no issue with this. They fully understand it. Two, it's not impacting our schools unless the fee's paid. And at the time the fees are paid, the schools are being reimbursed for the fees on the impacts. So the simple approach is, this makes sense.
Okay. Is there any further, Trustee Sabo?
I just think there's more complications with this, and we talked about legal fees. I don't think you do that when you pay the permit fees right up front to get a building permit. I know the schools enjoy having impact fees. There's also another side of it, and that's the resident side. And the resident side, when there's more impact fees, there's more children. When there's more children, there's more schools. And when there's more schools, there's more school referendums. So although we want to be competitive, I think we ought to think about our residents also.
I'm not following that line. Hey, are you suggesting that we should not try to get kids, families in this community?
Absolutely not.
Well, why don't you explain to me what you just said? I didn't follow.
Well,
I didn't follow
am
that.
addressing only the comment that was made that said that the schools would enjoy more impact fees, and I think that that's wonderful. But there's another side to it, that then when there's more impact fees, there's more children. And when there's more children, there's more classrooms that are needed, and then therefore there's more referendums. And we know the history here of referendums, school referendums. Some pass and some don't. That's my only comment. I'm not saying we shouldn't be competitive, but there are some things about this change that I don't particularly like, that's all.
Well, all I can
Doesn't
tell you
go
is
anywhere after that.
I can just go back to saying that the only budget that it affects is the school budget. Your safeguard is you don't get an occupancy permit until it's paid, and the school has no issue with it. So I don't even understand why we keep going around in circles here. The school has no issue with this thing.
Well, I don't know that they don't. If they
They
didn't have issues, they wouldn't think of it as being temporary.
They
And
want
we're
to,
testing it.
they want to use a project, and they want to see what it looks like 12 months from now, instead of saying this is a forever type of situation. They are actually putting a safeguard in there, saying they're going to review it in 12 months.
I don't know.
But they
why-
don't have an issue with it.
I don't know why schools want to wait for their money when they could have it up
Well,
front.
maybe you should be on the school board then.
Well, I don't want to be on the school board. I'm on this village board, and I'm going to be voting no for the reasons that I have stated.
That's your prerogative, Margaret. That's absolutely your prerogative.
Absolutely.
Okay, so is there any further discussion?
Well, I'd like to just say this, LTHS does not oppose the changes as stated.
You might have to talk into Michael. about it.
LTHS does not oppose changes as stated in the letter draft that was sent to them. Also, 33C states, we are fine with the timing you described in your draft. So obviously, the school districts have no issue, and they signed these.
I think the great thing about this particular project, I know the committee has spent a number of months discussing it, and we spent quite a bit of time with the superintendents talking about it. The great thing about the project, from my perspective, is that the superintendents trusted the village to administrate it appropriately. You actually see that in the superintendent's comments from the high school district. You know, we trust that the village will administer this appropriately. And I had those kind of conversations with them. They feel that we're going to be able to do it. There's an added degree of comfort that it's a 12-month deal and that we're going to take their feedback into consideration. And the committee insisted on that, actually, during your couple months of discussion, so.
Okay. Is
Mr.
there-
Mayor, I just have one quick
Trustee
question. This agreement that they will sign if they defer payment, is this going to be a legally binding contract type that will stand up in court if they refuse?
Yes.
Okay. Is there any further discussion?
I'm curious, I have a question. I have a question
Go
about
right ahead, Margaret.
the impact fees. And in all cases, with the two elementary schools and also the high school, when it comes to detached single-family homes, the four-bedroom home on the site contribution is more expensive than the five-bedroom.
Right.
So what is the reason for that?
That's common in all communities.
It's common,
It's
what?
common in all communities based on the Naperville formula. There's a certain degree where more bedrooms do not result in more children. It's kind of been litigated. Mark may be able to speak to it even more, but you'll see that in most communities.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Is there any further discussion? Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Yukich?
No.
Trustee Costa?
Aye.
Trustee DeVivo?
Aye.
Trustee K. Janice?
Aye.
Trustee Sabo?
No.
Trustee Suisse?
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay. That concludes legislation and action items. The next portion of this meeting is a workshop. Tonight, we will have a brief presentation from the village's consultant, Hassel Levine. I will let Economic Development Director Janie Patch introduce the workshop topic.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Board of Trustees. Hassel Levine, the consulting firm for the 159th Street Corridors Planning Study, has been conducting preliminary analysis and documenting existing conditions. This includes identifying issues, opportunities, and influences that will play a role in formulating plans and recommendations for the 159th Street corridor. A major component of this first phase of the study is a market analysis. This market analysis is a significant component of the overall planning study and will help inform the planning process moving forward. Dan Gardner from Hassel Levine will provide a presentation to the village board tonight, which will focus solely on the preliminary market and demographic analysis. And I'd just like to make a note here that the market assessment report, which was included in the village board's agenda packet for tonight, is a draft, and it will be refined further before it's ready for public release and posting on the project website. So just that little note in mind. The presentation tonight is for the village board. Dan Gardner will respond to any questions from the village board following his formal presentation. Residents and stakeholders are asked to save any questions or input they may have from tonight for the next public input meeting, which is on June 26th. This will be an interactive visioning workshop for the public, and it is scheduled for June 26th. It will take place at the Homer Junior High cafeteria, and the time for that will be from 6:30 to 8 p.m. So with that introduction, I will turn the microphone over to Dan Gardner with Hassel Levine for the presentation of the market analysis for the 159th Street corridor.
Great. Thank you, Jenny. As Jenny said this, I'll try to keep this brief, and that this is a preliminary analysis, and it's a few things that have already been tweaked and changed from what you will get that'll be part of the more formal existing conditions analysis. The way that this is looked at and incorporated into the existing conditions is clearly there are changes occurring in the market. We just heard a discussion about some of the things that are changing in the residential market. There are things changing across the board in all sectors of the market. So what happens and what is happening today isn't necessarily going to be reflected in what will be potentials in the future. And Janie had asked me that question yesterday. So what happens then? We have a market study and things change when the road configuration is done and everything's in place. And my answer to that is we come back and we look at it again. That's one of the things that we commit to you, is that we don't just leave you hanging and say, well, that's what it was in June of 2013, so good luck. So there's going to be things that will change, and clearly we'll look at those. But this is to look at just kind of a snapshot of where things are today and where potentially things could be evolving. When the 355 extension went in from 55 to 80, the timing probably from a market perspective couldn't have been worse in realizing those potentials. By the time it opened and everybody got comfortable using it, the market tanked and things just didn't happen. There was a lot of planned activity at different locations that didn't occur, but now things are starting to move a little bit more, and they're moving in other areas as well. So when we look at this, we look at it from a few different perspectives of how the corridor functions, the 159th Street corridor, but also how the 355 corridor will influence things, and then what are some of those other influences that are occurring around the marketplace. I'm going to go through just a few things of how we look at it, and maybe, there we go. Might be easier if I just, when we look at it, try to get this map up here. Cam, is there a way to go to full screen here on this laptop? Do you know how to go to full screen? I will look, I'll just use this. And so we look at drive times in terms of how a market interacts. And the reason is that people don't necessarily behave according to geographic boundaries or municipal boundaries. So especially when you have juxtaposition to major interstates and arterials, that's going to influence not only who has access to your market, but also the people within that market that have access to other areas. So you look at, there's 24,000 plus people in Homer Glen, but they don't stop at the boundaries. So people don't stop, and you could probably stop somebody along a few different corridors and ask them what community they're in, and if they're not from the immediate area, they probably couldn't tell you exactly what town they're in. So looking at it from a drive time perspective, if you look at it from the inner circle colored area is a 10-minute drive time, the green area is a 15-minute, the 20-minute drive time is the outside darker area, and that's kind of more for illustrative purposes as anything. But when people are in a more dense urban environment, they tend to do more of their day-to-day shopping within about a 5 to 7 minute drive. In a more open rural area, people will get more used to traveling 10 minutes plus for groceries and things like that. The bigger ticket items will be more influenced on a 15 plus minute drive time. But when you look at this area, within that 10-minute drive time, you've got about 100,000 people within 10 minutes. And you can see the influence of 355 on this map as that little finger that goes north takes you up, straight up to 55, and then south to I-80. And within the larger 15-minute drive time, you've got 250,000 people living in that area. You expand it to 20 minutes and you're up to 670,000 plus people. So I mean, you think about that, if that were a city in and of itself, that would be a pretty big city. So these are the influences from a residential population standpoint of who's living in here. And all the area within the market, the different markets are growing. They're not growing to where they were projected to grow several years ago, but the good news is they're not losing population. The growth is a little bit more moderate. Household incomes are increasing, even in relation to net present value. And then they're also, the population is getting older. So you have an aging population that's becoming a little more affluent, that is growing. And that has implications on the whole regional market. So within this area, you go up 10 minutes and you're up to 55 in the Bolingbrook Promenade, and you go with a little bit further east, you're in Orland Park and Orland Square. So there's competition within this market, but there's also opportunity. And this gets to, there's a few tables in your packet that was provided, but it just goes to the population that we talked about. It's difficult to read on the screen there, but it's looking at where that growth is occurring and how it's projected to occur up to 2017. So looking a little bit further out, we have the aging population, as I said, but you also have a good median income as well. And if we look at the age, as I said, this is just to show you, to demonstrate within the 10 and 15 minute drive times that we do have this population that's getting older, and the 55 plus age cohorts going up. Some loss in the population as the population gets older, and it's not always offset by in the middle age cohorts in the 45, 54-year-old cohorts. The other thing that you look at in an area, especially when you have access to arterials, is businesses and the employment population. And within the 0 to 10 minute drive time, we're looking at about 27,000 people in that. If you go back to that, looking at that map, 27,000 employees. And then within the 15 minute, we're going to add just about 100,000 employees, and then go out to 20 minutes. They're almost at 250,000 employees with 35,000 different businesses. You add that to the residential population, and you have a significant base from which retailers can draw from, and businesses, service uses. The employers are significant in that they influence potential hotel use, restaurant use in the daytime population. So you have traffic, all these people are traveling to and from jobs. You have different opportunities to capture some of that pass-through traffic on a daily basis. But again, so do other locations within the market area. And you also, one of the things we like to emphasize is that you don't want to detract from what you do have going on. So this analysis is really looking at, we kind of put a center point at Parker and 159th just to put a point of reference on the corridor. So it's not necessarily looking, if you would look at a different market area if you're up at 143rd and Bell in different locations, because of just you see how quickly you can get to other areas based on the access to arterials and interstate systems. So it'll vary a little bit. So often the question is, when you look at a corridor as opposed to an entire community, is, well, what about that seems low or that seems high? But it's based on the corridor itself. So some of these things that we talk about, the potentials, we also want to emphasize looking at, as I said, not competing with existing businesses and existing uses and existing synergy that you have going in some areas, so to make sure that that is respected and reflected. Just to give you an idea of how the markets are looked at, this is a leakage and surplus analysis and chart. If you go to the bars on the right are looking at where is market leakage, and leakage is just basically defined as if the dollars are escaping the market, there's the demand exceeds supply. Surplus is there more square footage for a particular use than there would be an estimated demand of expenditures by a household. And you see that a lot of times you get that surplus in an area that's served by some regional mall locations and some larger concentrations of retail, just because you have, in some cases, 1 million square feet of retail that's proximate to a residential population that's much smaller. Because it's serving a much bigger area. As I said, some of those bigger ticket items are servicing a bigger area, but then you're also, because of some of the outlots and other areas, the ancillary development that goes around that, you have it's kind of the convenience and the neighborhood type uses. So this is really just to kind of give you an idea of how it's looked at from surplus and leakage within the market area, and this is looking at the 10-minute market area. And what it breaks it down into restaurants by type, grocery stores, specialty retailers, clothing stores, and those types of items are all looked at universally.
For the public's benefit, because it's hard to read, why don't you mention the biggest leakage categories that your study shows we have?
In this case, and again, I want to emphasize that this is looking at kind of a snapshot of where things are at today, purely from the supply and demand. And the way this is looked at is it's using U.S. Census data. It's using American Community Survey data, Esri Business Analyst, which is a nationally recognized demographer, and they mine data and they continuously update supply and demand information. And it's looked at from the drive time that we talked about. So just looking at a 10-minute drive time, we're looking at potential leakage in building and materials. That would be your Home Depot, Menards, lawn and garden supply, same type of categories. Grocery stores, both in the specialty retailers and the typical Joel Dominic's, Mariano's type grocery stores, liquor stores, the gas stations, clothing stores. Those are some of the bigger items in terms of leakage going on in the market. Full service restaurants are indicated as being an area where there's room for growth. And the limited service restaurants, in the trustees' packet, there's a reference that kind of says that there is more potential than is being indicated on here, and that's one of the things we want to go back in and look at again, is that the different types of restaurants in which there's capacity. So this is just to give you the indication of where those potentials lie within the market area that's defined as that drive time from, well, for analysis purposes, from Parker and 159th. And what we did, what we created here, just this is something that will be part of the implementation piece when the study is done. But I want to show this here, and it's done to help the village staff in assessing what types of uses may fit in different areas. And this can actually be applied to other locations within the village as well. It's one of the residual benefits of doing a study like this is there are outcomes and there's tools that can be applied to other parts of looking at the village. But this is to look at different store types applied to those industry categories with examples of the store type, the square footage, what the requirements are, typical square footage size of the store, the site, examples of the type of store. Does the store require, or the user, this also includes some other types of uses, does it require exposure? Does it require visibility? Is access important when some of the site requirements of the particular retailer? So this is just to show what will ultimately be an outcome of the document itself and how to apply it when the study is completed. And this is going back as well to what I had said about what we do is that we don't just go away when it's done and say good luck. Just to give some perspective, this is looking at some of the regional commercial nodes, just in a small, large scale, but just to put perspective, the red stripe on there is the corridor and where some of the retail nodes within the study area. This isn't capturing every single strip center or retailer, but just giving some perspective to how the retail is spread out in the region. We did a similar thing as we look at, and this is the last piece of what we're looking at right now, is the hotels. And it's not that the expectation is that a hotel would be built somewhere around 159th itself, like as you traverse east. There are certainly hotels as you get into Orland and down east to Tinley, but you have a corridor of 355 that is essentially devoid of hotel activity. And that's reflective, and there was a similar map that we'll be putting together for the industrial market as well. Industrial, and when I say industrial, I mean light industrial, warehousing, tech park, business park development. Is that this corridor is sort of untapped in some regards to a lot of different categories because of the timing of when it came out of the ground. I think if the 355 corridor came out of the ground in 2003, you'd see a different development pattern than you see today. So this is the potential of, you have all this traffic passing through, you have those employment centers that we talked about, and you have location, juxtaposition to the other interstates, you have Silver Cross Hospital activity, you have a lot of things going on now that may potentially influence hotel properties along the 355 corridor, of which 159th could certainly be in a position to capture that. What comes with that then is the ancillary development and the other development, the restaurants we talked about, some of the office space that could go with that to support the hotel properties and vice versa. How far east that goes will be kind of a subject of market dynamics. It'll be policy decisions. It'll be influenced in part by where the access points are on 159th. But there is an opportunity there. As I said, there's also looking at the industrial office market, larger scale developments. You have a lot of activity along 55, a lot of activity on the I-80 corridor. Those two market areas, for purposes of definition, the way that the regional area is looked at, have some of the highest vacancy rates in the Chicago market right now, albeit they're declining. But what we'll see is start to see absorption within those markets, and already seeing some of the occupancy taking place of both buildings being built as well as occupying the empty spaces. And at some point, this market will start to see where there's a void. 294 has industrial warehousing business park. 355 is a market that, for those that don't need the 294 access, it provides a good alternative. And so this isn't short or midterm, but it's a little bit longer term, but it's something that within the 159th Street exit, there's probably potential looking forward at that as well. So a couple things just to add, and you'll see is when the process goes on, is that the corridor is not, you look at corridors, it doesn't function the same way as the entire stretch. So there's not a one-size-fits-all application to the whole corridor. So the corridor itself really needs to be treated as separate little sub-areas. So you have your area that will absorb market potential on the west end near the interstate. Then you get on the far east end where it's a little bit less dense. And then in the middle, there's a little bit of more of a mix of, it's kind of a hybrid of some of both sides. Seems pretty straightforward, but that's kind of how it will likely continue to function, and probably should. There's not, if you don't want to start planning for commercial development along the entire corridor, and I don't know that anybody expects that, but that's not how it should develop, in part because of it's a long corridor, it functions different. There will be retail nodes that can support at different locations, at Bell, at Parker, and places where there's a little bit more density and activity and higher traffic counts. But if there's an expectation that will extend the entire corridor, it's really not realistic, and it really wouldn't be in the best interest of the village either, because of the other areas that you have as well. That said, there's a lot of different development opportunities that exist. Many of this will become policy decisions. I've often said that development works in capacities. You have your market capacity that we look at here. What can the market support in terms of supply and demand in the market? And that's by numbers as well as it is the condition of the existing uses. Then you have physical capacity and site capacity. From that standpoint, you can have market potential, but if you don't have the sites to accommodate your market potential, you're not going to realize that development unless you take the initiatives to create those sites, a site assemblage, creating access points, things like that. But equally, if you have physical capacity and there's no market, it doesn't matter if you have a 500-acre site, you're not going to get a regional mall. The other part of it is economic and financial capacity. Can a developer pull it off, or is there such a need for the extension of infrastructure? We heard conversation about stormwater and things. If those things need to be done and it's very costly to do, is the potential still there to make the numbers work to get the development? And if the development won't work from a purely investment standpoint, from a developer standpoint, will the village or the municipality take Homer Glen out of the equation and be it anywhere? Does the municipality have the capacity or the wherewithal or the inclination to provide the subsidy to get the type of development that might occur otherwise? And then the last part is community capacity. You can have physical capacity, market capacity, financial capacity, but if the community doesn't want it, then it doesn't make sense to go forward. So if you have all those things married together, that's what gives you your development potential, and it can be different at different locations along the corridor.
Mayor, one of the things I might suggest, when the mayor and I and Janie were at the commercial shopping center conference, we actually saw Director Patch in action with the information that you've been presented tonight, a lot more detailed information even. And so I thought it might be useful, the mayor and I actually saw it, but it might be useful for Janie just to explain to the board how useful this information is when we're talking to potential developers, potential retail development.
Are you able to access that graph of supply-demand quickly? We went with an iPad, we went with our smartphones, and we went with a binder that was full of information that we used however we needed, as we were able to get access to corporate representatives and brokers for different retailers that we were trying to approach. And what was very valuable about this kind of information was we did our research beforehand. We were really approaching retailers where we had just an inkling by our own analysis, but with this data to back us up, that there actually is an unmet opportunity for a particular retail category to come to Homer Glen to establish business and to be successful. So information always helps back up whatever you might be there to say, because otherwise you're just making a pitch, right? So we were trying to be scientific about it and approach it from the business decision-making model standpoint, which is businesses need to find locations where they're going to succeed. And so we were using the data on the floor of the convention and able to approach different businesses and say, we want you to take a look at some of these numbers. These are some of the other attributes of our community. This is what's going on with, latest developments. For instance, the Meyer breaking ground news, the fact that road improvements are being planned and coming along down the pipeline in fairly short order for especially 159th Street, and then talk about the sites, the development sites that we have, and show that we have capacity to bring in new businesses. So it was very helpful on the spot, being able to refer to those numbers and show a visual like this and point out information. So
Thanks, Jane. Thank you.
And I guess I should just add to that we got some action from that. We're following up with the action that we did from the convention. So
Yeah, to just follow up on what Janie said, most of the businesses asked to keep it confidential, just because they look at they look at a lot of different sites, different communities. They can only be in certain locations. But it was very nice to have this information and be able to share it with them. The group was well prepared, and quite a few people said that our businesses stated that you don't really have to tell us a whole lot about Homer Glen. We've done our research on it. It's just a matter of where we best fit in the Homer Glen boundary agreement. And some of the names were extremely impressive. And they subsequently have come out here. I know you've heard some names flying around and what have you, but since the ICSC convention, Janie has met people that have come to town, and we're looking forward to some big things here. So if anybody has any questions for the representative from Hazel Levine, or for Janie, or for Cam, this is an ongoing process that after Mike gets his question answered, maybe the representative can tell us the next stage of what we expect to see from Hazel Levine. Go ahead, Trustee Costa.
Just, reading through the report, it took a couple readings to start to understand it. I'm sorry. After reading through the report, it took a couple of times through it to understand a lot of your information and things that were in there. I like the last 10 pages that give us basically 10 pages of business incentive programs, or, things that can possibly keep us in the market or give us a hedge up on somebody that's not offering any kind of an incentive or grant programs or anything to anybody else. My question is just a clarification, and I try to understand the charts the best I can, but on your page 4, you have on there households and then families. You have population, households, and families. To me, if you have 31,000 households, how can you have 24,000 families? Does that mean there's 25% of those houses, there's no families in them? Just explain that to me, how you come up with those numbers.
Population is pretty straightforward. That's the number of people.
Right.
Households is the number, you get an average number of people, 2 point, whatever the number is per household of people, or I don't have the exact number in front of me, but that's average household size is 2.84 people, I guess, is what it is. So families would be just the number of people of which in that are, people with, households with children or families living together within that household. So it's more of a census number than it is a functional number in terms of how it works in the context of market demand or demographics. But the two numbers that are important in that equation are population and households, and then just whether or not there's growth or reduction in either of those numbers.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any further questions for the representative?
The Mayor, the one thing I just wanted to highlight, and I know Janie mentioned this earlier, is these documents are like continuously being revised. The deal that we made with House Levine is that they were going to keep us posted as we went through the process. So I know Janie mentioned that the full document that you got on the attachment is still in draft form, and they're making revisions to it, they're making improvements. And so when they're completely done with it, it'll be posted on our website, which we know people are gaining access to. And then, Janie, did you mention, I had to step out of the room for a minute, did you mention the visioning workshop?
I did,
Okay, very good,
on the 26th.
very good.
So the next step is the vision workshop?
Right.
Correct.
Okay, all right, and
That's
that's
open
it,
to
okay.
public. That's
All right. Are there any further questions for the representative? Okay, thank you very much.
right. Thank you.
It helped us very much at the convention.
I appreciate it. I'm glad to hear that.
Okay, that concludes our workshop item for tonight. Is there any old business? Is there any new business? Okay, then the next item is executive session. Is there a motion to go into executive session for the purposes of discussing pending litigation?
So moved.
First by trustee Yukich.
Second.
Second by trustee Costa. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. Okay, we're going to go into executive session. We will be back. How about we take 5 in between now and executive session?